Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There in 5 podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. It's been a minute since we've had an Under the Influencer episode. Actually, there's another podcast out now called Under the Influence. Just to clarify, mine's Under the Influencer. And it's just a series we've done for years now. But two different things. I've had some DMs that people that were confused. I heard it's really good, though. So check it out. I haven't gotten the chance to listen yet, but I love podcasts that aren't mine. Anyway, welcome back. But yeah, it's a series I do on my podcast. I kind of, in my head, unofficially split up episode types in a few different ways. One being topical deep dives, the other being a snorkel through several topics, which obviously is the opposite of a deep dive where we go through a bunch of different things. Crowdsourced episodes like the recent ones with Twinkle Twinkle's Soccer All-Star and Pussycat Doll, which were two of the most popular episodes I've ever had. I'm so glad you guys liked those. Those were really fun to record. It was nice to just do something lighthearted for a minute. It's hard for me to know sometimes what people are going to like or look for. But anyway, yeah, so the other type is Kate Lila episodes where people call into the hotline 312-397-9676 and can ask questions or for advice or fun pop culture stuff. And I call those Kate Lila after how much I love Delilah on the radio. And then I have typically once a month or so, I'll have on a guest. Sometimes it's a bonus episode, sometimes it's about a topic. But whenever I get the opportunity to interview an amazing influencer or micro influencer, I kind of put it in its own series because I like to lift the hood, if you will, and talk about the business of influencing with people of varying sizes in terms of following, numbers wise, but with incredibly high engagement. I think there's this really interesting world of influencers with under 100,000 followers. It's the definition of a micro, which includes me. How you can have your own community and world and this level of engagement that I think is incomparable to the larger influencers. And I don't know, I want to celebrate these women. I don't want them to get overlooked in favor of the same people we hear from all the time. I think that the amount of work you have to put in to get started, to start getting brand deals, to both develop and kind of sustain your persona so people feel like they know you because you want to engage with your community. In addition to the consistency you have to be able to do that. Like people love to trivialize Instagram activity as just you sharing your day, but it actually is work and it's a concentrated effort a lot of people undergo to do what I think is one of the great things about the internet that we're too quick to dismiss, which is educate, provide community, uplift other people, share not for the sake of showing off, but for, wanting to help people feel less alone, wanting people to laugh, wanting people to learn something, whatever it is. I love people who have a purpose. I love people who are so authentic and real, but also find and carve out a unique angle for themselves. And overall, I don't know. I love a workfluencer, a person with a full-time job outside of Instagram or whatever medium they're on, who just does it for fun and side income. But like, I think that's the thing with influencers is I can tell when people stop having fun. And I think there's something about it not being your full-time gig that allows it to have a levity that becomes difficult when it's all about monetizing, right? So today I'm so excited to have on Ailsa Emmel, also known as Happy Go Curly on Instagram. And I think she's been doing this since 2018 or so. She kind of started as a fashion account and wanting to, use her closet basically. And that was that time with like styling prompts and people were doing challenges where you use what you could out of your wardrobe for a certain amount of time. And she kind of evolved when she started doing something called Women's Health Wednesday, which I love and I think is such a great idea. She is a certified nurse midwife for her full-time job. And I've heard her talk about before how she is exposed to a lot of, women's insecurities, kind of being the one who pulls back the curtain and at the doctor's office, right? In a somewhat vulnerable position. And the general energy I've always gotten from her account is her wanting people to feel accepted and understood and not compare themselves to other people, which I'm here for. But beyond that, the health education piece I think is really interesting with Women's Health Wednesday because, well, in a superficial sense, what I look for in an influencer, when I said earlier, like an angle, I love the angle of women's health, obviously, but more importantly, like, I just want people to be people and I want them to exist and interesting, dynamic, wonderful people. If you're comfortable sharing on the internet, like who you are shines in every facet that you shine in. It doesn't need to make sense that you love fashion, but you're also a certified nurse midwife. Share both. We're here for it. She is so authentic. I think it feels more like you're following a friend with a specific expertise than it does somebody who's like lecturing you. And she talks a lot about vaginal health, for example. And I'm always trying to fill in my blind spots. You guys know I'm not like, super involved on the health scene. In fact, as I tell her and as I tear up several times during this conversation, because I have severe white coat syndrome and never go to doctors. And as she's talking, I just am like kind of realizing, wow, it may be never computed that I'm so sensitive. I need a level of bedside manner, and you're making me feel so calm and soothed that like a lot of my hangups about things that would require me to go to doctors more, like maybe it's not what it's about, but we don't need to get into my issues today. But on Women's Health Wednesday, she talks about all sorts of topics related to women's health, from giving birth and parenting and breastfeeding, labor, menopause, dryness. I mean, you name it. She talks about women's health in a very frank manner and topics that, the way I was taught about women's bodies are largely taboo. And I still am deconstructing a level of discomfort that I welcome and so appreciate people that speak about things so frankly and honestly and openly, but also not condescendingly. And I just think she truly has a gift with people, period. And how lucky are we that we're an extension of that gift when a human being is only scalable in their immediate life. Social media gives us access to a small piece of them on a much larger scale that we can learn from, appreciate, and who can bring a little bit more warmth to our days. I'm a huge fan of hers. I really enjoyed this conversation. I apologize. I tried to edit out a lot of the sniffles, and we do have some audio issues toward the end, especially. But that's remote. This is why before COVID, I literally would fly to anybody to record in person because I like to connect and I care about the audio quality, but we're not in that world, obviously. So I appreciate your patience. But I think for the most part, it should be good. I think there's a few points where, well, I don't know if I had a cold. This was a few weeks ago, or if I was like emotional. Just decide for yourself. But I felt so like at ease talking to her, and I really love her so much, and I hope you guys do too. We talk about her background, how she got where she is, started her account, the upsides and downsides of Instagram. But we also talk about the perception of parenting on social media. How I learned like family life and about labor quite abruptly in middle school. And I think it's a source of like trauma for me, the childless millennial of it all. We talk about all sorts of things. So I hope you like it as much as I do. While I'm here, guys, the Asian hate crimes that are going on, the shooting this week in Atlanta, I honestly am embarrassed to say until the past couple of weeks, I didn't really understand the data behind this. And like, for example, Stop AAPI Hate, which is an organization that tracks discrimination against Asian and Pacific Island Americans. In the past year since the coronavirus pandemic, has received well over 3,000 firsthand accounts of anti-Asian American harassment or attacks. And that's compared to around 100 incidents annually in previous years, I think. And keep in mind, that's just what is reported, right? So much of this goes unreported. And I'm sure there are countless other ways Asian Americans have felt attacked, microaggressions, ways businesses, employment, general culture of every day has been impacted since the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know. I just wanted to say I see you. I support you. I always want to use words like incomprehensible because the discrimination and these hate crimes are horrendous. They disgust me. And I always have to stop myself when I say unimaginable or incomprehensible because I never want my perspective on the outside to dilute the very true reality of many people and many feelings and experiences that likely have been internalized way too many times. And I don't know. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I want people to always watch out for their mental health. And I know I don't understand your experience, but I certainly honor it. And whatever, I know these kind of events really drudge up a lot of different feelings and traumas and internalized experiences that you kind of go back through whether you want to or not. And I just encourage everybody to keep close tabs on their friends and on their own mental health because we're in tough times as it is, and it breaks my heart like hearing stories and experiences about feeling discriminated against throughout the pandemic. And it's like the few times we even were able to leave or go outside and get some fresh air for people to feel like they weren't safe or their parents and loved ones weren't safe. And it's worth noting too that there was a stat I read on Stop AAPI Hate that that there are 2.3 times more incidents of hate crimes against AAPI women than men. And I know there's been a lot of conversation surrounding people pegging what happened in Atlanta as sexism or like, God forbid, I mean, don't even get me started on the bad day of it all. And people love to find a reason to dismiss the reality and existence of racism when that dismissal in and of itself shows the problem of it existing, because why does it make you so uncomfortable? And I think that I've been trying to think a lot more about intersectionality and how sometimes you want to compartmentalize, feminist issues, sexism, and racism as different issues, but the overlap is immense. And oftentimes people like me, white women who are feminists, are only really aware of and passionate about issues that directly affect them, right? And that is not what I want to do here. I, if anything, want to represent my listeners' interests more than just my own. And I think that, I don't know, I guess I just encourage anybody to understand more about how these different problems in our society, these different systems, are almost flying buttresses in a sense that hold each other up and overlap way more than you think they would. There's a weird reference to French architecture. I'm sorry. And anyways, I'm sorry. I always am trying to find like the right words, but I guess I don't know if that's as important as just I want to say. I'm thinking about any and all of my listeners who are Asian American, Pacific Islander. I'm going to be a pain in the ass about mental health. Just a heads up, if anybody's looking for therapy or someone to talk to in professional counseling, you can go to the APISAA therapist directory. It's the Asian Mental Health Collective, and they have a directory of Asian Pacific Islander and South Asian American therapists specifically in all 50 states. I'll put it in the show notes too. That URL is asianmhc.org/APISAA, asianmhc.org/APISAA, but also will be in the show notes. And a couple Instagram accounts I think are worth following, at Asians for Mental Health. It's run by a clinical psychologist, Jenny Wang, and there's also at Asian Mental Health Project, and it provides resources to educate about mental health and encourages people to check in and seek help and provides a safe space. And I love, these are not replacements for therapy. I appreciate people who work so hard to provide online safe spaces for members of their community and educational resources for those outside of the community to provide more support to loved ones. I don't know. I'm just musing. I try to be talk about what I'm learning and allyship. Just I don't know. I never want to be condescending or preachy when I'm the farthest thing from perfect at it. Rather, I just want to share what I'm learning over time. And I think what I've learned through different friends and influencers that I follow is like, I think what's so important about so many people is they're deeply empathetic and want to be the best allies they can be. But I guess there's just an acknowledgement of being on the outside and not being the one affected by the issue that I'm trying to remember, not as I talk about myself, not to center it on myself in a sense of incessantly reaching out and asking how to help it, if it's not just to help, but rather to absolve myself of some sort of guilt or that like panic you first feel when somebody associates a group you identify with as doing something racially charged and you want to defend yourself. Remember, it's not about you. And beyond that, if you're not racist, you're not racist. You have nothing to hide. You don't need to panic. You don't need to act weird about it. You don't need to deny its existence, right? And I think sometimes when we ask people how we can help, it's like putting more emotional labor on the issue and asking them to identify how we can help them, but that's not helpful in and of itself. I think one thing that's like so overlooked sometimes is just like, in addition to supporting your loved ones and friends however you and they see fit, is just kind of that the almost macro issue of like, say it out loud, call it what it is, call it racism, call it sexism, call it violence against women, against sex workers, against the elderly. Make it clear that you denounce it, that you have no tolerance for it. Like the media and, different sources I've read from today, it's like people tiptoe around calling it what it is when the only thing that is that it is not your job to say something is or is not racist or sexist or targeted in some sense unless you are a member of the community that's being marginalized. This is what I was talking about last week, even with Meghan Markle, to a different in a different circumstance. It's just like, why are people telling us this is my experience and we're saying, is it though? I don't know. I mean, like, come on. More of a window, less of a mirror. And just as much as we can make our loved ones feel validated and believed and trusted and safe with us, like that's what's important. So, just my unsolicited 2 cents that I don't even know are worth anything, but just sending a lot of love to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Oh, wait, first I have a really exciting advertiser. You'll want to hear this because especially if you're a fan of ALSA, you're going to want this coupon code. Actually, hold that thought because I think we mentioned the company in the episode and maybe there's a natural segue and I'm just going to leave you in suspense because it's very exciting. So keep listening. But what's also really exciting is that it's now lighter outside and as more people, are getting vaccinated and I hope, we turn a corner at some point. I feel hopeful and it makes me want to be more creative and experiment more and not feel like it's almost like when you have the option to go outside, you're like more comfortable being in your home and in your element, and Skillshare, no matter what 2021 brings, you can spend it creating something meaningful with Skillshare's online classes. Time is what we make of it, so they say. And you can find inspiration on Skillshare in the moment, or if you've been looking to pursue a particular craft or trade and express your creativity. They have such fun classes. Actually, I noticed that, I don't know if this is new, but I just noticed it this month, is they have one called Podcasting Secrets, How to Start Your Own Podcast. And honestly, I should probably take it and redo all of this. But they have a lot of interesting creative writing, illustration, photography, classes if you want to learn the fundamentals of a DSLR. I really thought I was a DSLR champ back in the early 2010s when blogs were happening. But also more important things like activism, creating inspiring art for change, or video for Instagram, tell an engaging story in less than a minute. My God, I can't tell an engaging story in less than 2 hours. I love the accessibility of educational content and how you can take classes at your leisure in a time that works for you and pursue something on the side that doesn't need to be for commerce, but just for joy. I think Skillshare is such a cool company. I use it all the time, and it's affordable compared to like in-person classes, which we can't really do still, and online workshops, the coaching seminars of it all. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. So if you want to explore your creativity, go to Skillshare.com/BeThereIn5 and get a free trial of premium membership. That's Skillshare.com/BeThereIn5. Again, Skillshare.com/BeThereIn5 for a free trial of a premium membership. Okay, well, we're here. Hope you don't mind. Got to make a living. I recently made a switch in my vitamin routine, my ritual, if you will. I don't mean to start the rumor mill, but sometimes I'm in a good mood and I'm like, maybe I wouldn't be that bad of a parent. And then I used my own code to buy ritual prenatal vitamins. But in general, I know a lot of women that take them whether or not you're planning for kids. And I just thought, maybe I'll get the old oven in good shape. Sorry, this is weird. But we do deserve to know what we're putting in our bodies and why, especially when it comes to something we take every day. Ritual's clean, vegan-friendly multivitamin is formulated with high-quality nutrients in bioavailable forms your body can actually use. So what I like is the story of it being started because the creator was finding all these like synthetic additives in prenatal vitamins when she was starting a family, and you won't find any sugars, GMOs, major allergens, synthetic fillers, or artificial colorants in Ritual because she wanted to create the things she was missing in the marketplace. And like I've only had the mint ones up until this point, but the prenatal have this amazing like citrus fresh taste, and it's a delayed release capsule. And I don't know, I don't get sick off of them. I am a huge, huge fan. I've been taking them probably for a year now, but just made the switch this past month, so I will keep you posted. But yeah, it fills gaps in my vitamin intake, especially with vitamin D3, and it's only 2 pills a day. And as I've talked about before, they're made traceable. You know what you're taking, where they come from. They have a visible supply chain, and they have different types available for women, men, and teens in different life phases. And your multivitamins are delivered to your door every month with free shipping, always. You can start, snooze, or cancel your subscription anytime. And if you don't love Ritual within your first month, they'll refund your first order. So get key nutrients without the BS. Ritual is offering Be There in 5 listeners 10% off during their first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/BeThereIn5 to start your ritual today. That's ritual.com/BeThereIn5 to start your ritual today. Did I just sell myself out that I totally used my own code and bought another subscription with 10% off? Oops. Okay, guys, I am so excited today to have one of my favorite follows on the podcast for an Under the Mic or Influencer segment. Welcome to the podcast, Ailsa Emmel, otherwise known as at Happy Go Curly.
Hi guys, I'm like so excited to be here. I wish you could see my face because you'd be like, oh my gosh, she really is so excited.
I'm honored like that because when people that are my favorite to follow actually listen to the podcast or pay attention to anything I do, I'm so honored. So thank you for your enthusiasm.
Oh my goodness. When I listen to the podcast, I probably like have to slow it down because you know how fast you talk, and I'm like, she's so brilliant and her words. And I'm just like, I've always told you, I'm like, you have such a great command of the English vocabulary that it's so impressive to me. So I'm the one that's truly honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, remind me of how you found the podcast, or is our connection what Kate finds?
Yep, you know it. Oh, Katie. I was just getting started into like the podcast world, and I was like, is this really like worth it? Because I remember growing up in New York, and so I grew up in the Bronx, and it was like my grandfather would always listen to like NPR news. So I was like, is that what this is? Or 1010 wins on the, and we'd sit in the car. And so I was like, is that what like a podcast is? I was like, I don't know if I have time for that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like little envelopes opening up in my head, like, oh, I've got room for that. I've got room. I want to know about that. And so it was just, that's literally how I could describe it, how I felt. And I was like, I really like this podcast world. And now I'm just like, okay, there's just too many. I have to narrow it down. So that's how I found it.
No, truly. Growing up, like talk radio was like almost an inside joke with my dad because I hated that he listened to talk radio instead of music. And it's funny to have found myself here because I find myself unable to listen to music because I'd rather be learning something.
Me too.
Like, I like to hear people chat, but
Yeah.
you are like, you were one of the favorite follow-ups of so many people I know. Courtney and I were talking about you the other night, and she said it perfectly. She was like, looking at her stories is like a warm hug. And I was like, that's exactly what it is.
Oh, that
You are
is
so
so sweet.
you're informative and helpful, but also very earnest and warm. And like
Hmm.
the way you approach Instagram isn't even, it could be if it wanted to be, but it's not, it doesn't feel self-promotional. It doesn't feel
Hmm.
in vain. You genuinely seem to be sharing and connecting in a way that I just don't think many people genuinely do. And I'd love to hear more about, well, your background. I know it's kind of a tall order, so talk for as long as you
Hmm.
need to about like
Hmm.
your background, your career, and how you got started sharing on the internet.
Well, thank you for that. It's always nice when we're eulogized while we're alive, right? Like it's just that's beautiful. I truly am like so thankful when I to hear kind things about myself. I'm like, wow, is that really what I'm doing? But I definitely like my space to be where for those people that can sometimes feel ostracized from the cool girl group or like I hated that. I hate that in the real world. I hate that as a woman, that we often see that. So I'm just like, just come as you are, like however you are, as long as you're kind, you're welcome here. That's all I want. And that's kind of how I try to run my Instagram, and just to remind people, like, at the essence of all of this, like, sure, things are nice, but material is just shit. Sorry if I'm not allowed to curse, but like that's just, sure, like those things can make you happy, but those things are fleeting. But really, what truly makes you happy are the encounters you have with others. And I know that sounds so trite, but it is the thing that stays with us, right? So, you asked me how I started on Instagram. I started like years ago with just a private account. And that was back when they did like style challenges. And it was like you found your prompt for Sunday and you were like getting ready all for the week. And you would actually like use your clothes. And it really made me realize like I was only using like a small portion of my closet when I was getting dressed. So that was so much fun, but never about like turning into an influencer. And I know how you
Right.
felt about that word as well. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, influencer. Do I really consider myself an influencer? And I realize that it almost has like a negative connotation to it. But to me, I would say I'm more of like an educator, a cheerleader, or like you even said, like just a friend. So I'm gonna tell my friends on Instagram exactly what I would tell my friends that I see in real life, and they often call me and they're like, wait, do you really like that? And I'm like, didn't I just say that on my Instagram? Like, I'm not gonna lie. That's exactly how it is. And they're like, oh. So it is funny to see how my real friends relate even to my Instagram world. But so that's how I started, was with the style challenges. And then, oops, a couple years ago, we moved. We were in North Carolina, which we're actually moving back this summer. And then it kind of started. I was not even at 10,000 followers yet, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so cool to have like a swipe up?" Which, for what? Like, it can swipe ups can be so annoying. So so I finally get to 10,000. We moved to Boston, which was the absolute best year of my life. How many people can truly say this year was the best year of my life? Well, yes, I feel like I found myself when we moved up to New England. And my husband was doing what would you call it? He was doing a fellowship at MIT. So he was real busy. Like he's like real smart, like reading 3+ books a week, And I'm like, we don't even like talk politics because I would just feel dumb talking to him. So anyway, I would spend a lot of
He's
time
a Marine,
alone. And
right?
yeah, he's a Marine, and just probably one of the most, he's just such a humble guy. Like he's very dry, very dry.
Mhm.
But I'll have to tell you a story about that later, how people kind of receive him on Instagram. But so I just started kind of exploring, and I met a lot of ladies in Boston, and it was just fun. And the idea of like living in Boston, I could go to, Connecticut. And so I really linked up, and I think that's where I ended up kind of finding my community. And then things started kind of growing a little more, but it wasn't really until last year, I guess like the last year and a half, that I really became kind of an influencer. I had one of my old patients, or a friend of an old of mine. She messaged me and she was like, "I really think you should do like a Women's Health Wednesday." I was like, "Oh my gosh, girl, I don't have enough to talk about. Like, there's not going to be enough topics." And she was like, "I really think you should consider it." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't." And then that's how Women's Health Wednesday came to be. And it was like people were showing up, and I was like, wait, people are really listening to you. And then I started to I get a little nervous. No, I get really nervous like a couple days before Women's Health Wednesday because you start thinking about all the people that are listening. And I know
Mhm.
the stuff that I can talk about when I'm with a patient one on one, but you want to make sure that the stuff you talk about when you have all these people that it's the real deal and you're quoting facts and you're not, you know, misinterpreting things. So that's how Women's Health Wednesday came to be. And even if I wanted to get rid of it, I can't because people genuinely love it. The messages I receive, I'm like, wait, you got that from that? Like just telling people that you deserve to use your voice. Sorry, Kate, I'm just taking over your podcast. See, like I'm just
I
like a
want you
talker.
to. I'm here for it. I'm enamored. Please keep
I'm like,
going.
I'm like, so I've had like women that say to me, I didn't know like that I mattered when it came even to healthcare. Like, growing up, it was like, and you're probably too young to remember this, but like the doctor would walk in the room. My mom, they had the mentality like you stood up. Like there was a sort of reverence when
Mm.
a doctor or came into the room. There isn't that anymore. Trust me, they barely get off the freaking phone when you walk in. You know,
You're right.
in case your listeners don't know, I'm a midwife. I'm a CNM, not a lay midwife. I'm a midwife. I do deliveries in a hospital and I see patients in an office. And literally, like I'll walk into a room. My husband hates when I say literally, so sorry about that. But I walk into a room, and they'll have their phone, and I'm like, "You gonna get off the phone, girl? Because we here to talk. I'm gonna need you to get off your phone." And they're like, "Oh
You're
yeah, girl, sorry."
right.
so it is very interesting, but I see so many, well, not patients, but like followers that message and they're just like, I didn't know that I had that right. I'm like, girl, why are you going to that doctor? If you don't like that doctor and he's not listening to you or provider, fire them. And they're like, oh, and just this week I've got like two messages like, you were so right. I switched. And I was like, and they're like, it felt so good. And I was like, everyone deserves to be heard when they go in to
Mhm.
see their provider. Like, but where did we miss that people don't think that they have that right? I think growing up, that's how healthcare was. I will tell you that is no longer the case because people are starting to get hip and realize like, oh, I can fire you. And it's not a bad thing. When I say fire, it sounds so negative, but perhaps just like in choosing a therapist, it has to be someone that can relate to you,
Yeah, you're the
someone that,
client.
right, someone that listens to you. And you know what? Every patient's not going to like you. I know every patient. No, every patient likes me. No, I'm just kidding. Still need to develop. You still need that relationship with them. And it's just like, it's just it comes down to our same interaction just with people, right? I would often say growing up that my biggest, worst flaw was how I am with people. Like, I'm your biggest cheerleader and I'll love you so hard. But I'm also always looking for that one thing in that person that makes them amazing.
With Women's Health Wednesday, that's like one of my favorite things that you do. And
Mhm.
it's kind of an interesting thing when you think about it because social media is an approachable medium where people learn and share a lot, but a lot of traditional health providers aren't going to take the time to develop a following on social media. And it's such an
Yeah.
approachable way to hear from somebody that's not your healthcare provider. And I've
Hmm.
learned so much listening to you that I wouldn't think to ask, or I'd be too nervous to ask. Personally, I'm a person
Yeah.
with really bad white coat syndrome. Like I
Yeah.
avoid going to talk. Like, I always think I'm going to die. Like I avoid
Sure.
talking
Sure.
about things. Like I have a
Right.
lot of health related anxieties. And I think you providing a safe space for that in social media is a really interesting space to carve out because it's just not what most people are talking about on there, but you do it in a way that's not intimidating.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's interesting. I'm learning. And I think that as long as I'm learning, then I'm going to continue to do it. But I'm learning it helps me as far as dealing even with my own patients and to remember when I'm getting these messages from people and like I'm just like, did you not know that? How did you not know that? Like, why are you washing with Summer's Eve? Why are you douching? Girl, what are you doing? So it takes me back and I'm like, oh, this is definitely something that we need to talk about. And sometimes when I'm stuck, I mean, sometimes people want to go like very deep subjects. And I think that I would prefer to stay very basic. I don't talk as much about labor and pregnancy because I don't know. I probably should, but I don't. I want to appeal to women across all spectrums of their life. And
Hmm.
so if it's something that I'm seeing a lot of, like when I do go to clinic, then that's something that I'm like, okay, I probably should talk about that on my Women's Health Wednesday. Or, at work, people at work, I'll say, hey, what do you think is a good topic? And they'll bring some up. And some of them I'm like, that's so silly. And they're like, but Elsa, this is what we see. Like this is one of the most common questions. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So that's kind of how that's helped me form and develop the Women's Health Wednesday. And again, I've gotten women that are like, I went to a doctor, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, thank you for that. And I'm going, no way, girl, you can't give me credit for that. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
just it blows me away. And even women that are having like, painful intercourse. And I'm like, what? That takes away the whole point of it, girl. You're supposed to be having fun. So yeah. So I've learned that.
No, I think that's a really interesting point of you don't know what other people don't know, and in your like profession, things that are common knowledge, it's
Yeah.
hard to separate and realize that's not the case for other people. But I've kind of learned through my podcast as I've explored elements of like purity culture or with like childless millennial, and I
Mhm.
crowdsource and hear from so many people. I'm like fascinated by the vast array of women's experiences and how internalized they all are, because things get stigmatized or made to be taboo, and when we don't talk
Mhm.
about them, we don't know our experience isn't normal, or we should be having fun, or we shouldn't be shopping in the Vagisil aisle, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And the more people stay quiet about these things, people don't know how to improve their life. And yeah, I just think it's really interesting how different people's experiences are and what you consider normal. And I'm still like deep in my 30s learning I'm doing like how
I
little I know
know.
about like how my own body works.
Right, right. I mean, that's absolutely true. Like I see, I almost want to stand at the aisle at Target and be like, "No, girl, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, girl. It's not worth it." You know that meme? I love
Don't do
that.
it.
And I'm like, "No, you don't need that." But I do when I hear it. And again, I even got one this week, and she was like, "My vaginal health like is so much better because of you." And I was like, "Girl, as much as possible, let the labia breathe. Let the lips breathe."
It being like a
So
self-cleaning oven, I think is one of the, maybe the most fascinating thing. It's like it cleans itself. You're good.
I know, but we don't say it enough. And then women come in and they're so embarrassed. Like maybe it is a lot of it is cultural. Like they don't want to talk about, oh, I'm having sex. You're a woman, you're an adult, you're having sex. I want you to be safe. Let me show you what you can do to be safe. I mean, I'm sure your listeners are pretty open, but like I worked for Planned Parenthood several times in my life. And you talk about you want to learn about and be humbled? Go work at a Planned Parenthood. Go
Hmm.
volunteer at a Planned Parenthood. It will open your freaking eyes. It's like I consider myself very open, and I went there and I was like, I know shit about this world. Like I know nothing about suffering. I do know about suffering, but to actually sit there and hold a woman's hand, which everyone thinks all they do are
Right.
terminations, and that's not true. It's so much teaching. I taught so many young girls because their moms, they were too afraid to talk to their mom. That's what it was all
Hmm.
about. And I was like, how do we penetrate where we can actually teach women so that they are comfortable with their bodies, so that they don't feel exposed and vulnerable and make silly mistakes, right?
Right. And I think that not talking about it in some like some thought processes, especially in more conservative areas or church
Hmm.
driven education, is like the less you talk about it, theoretically, you won't know about things and it'll promote abstinence and people won't be promiscuous. And I just feel like there's this really misguided thought process of like the less we talk about it and breathe life into it, the less people will get involved. But it
Right.
actually is like such a miseducation and then leads people to detrimental decision making because they just don't know what they don't know. And like
Hmm.
the importance of being open and frank about everything and letting people make a decision based off of that than based off of no information is something I
Right.
feel so strongly about having no information
Right.
from like my like health education growing up.
I completely agree, and I think about it and I chew on it a lot. I mean, I have two young girls, right? I have twin girls that are 22, which I still look at them and I'm like, I can't believe you guys are my kids. Like it just blows me away. But still, here I talk about sex education, and you know who actually did the sex education and the body changes talk was my husband. He was like, "This is what you're
Really?
gonna." Yeah, it was so weird. Like, but for me, I think it's because it was like cultural, right? Like
Hmm.
in our culture, it was like this. When I went out into the world, they were like, just don't come home pregnant. And I'm like, okay, like that was a package you were supposed to like not come home with or something. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
right.
saying? So like it was just really interesting. And my husband, his culture was so different. He was like, no, like we would sit at the table and he'd say, what'd you hear at school today? And this is middle school. And like, let me just tell you, middle school is raw, right? And I was
Hmm.
like, I this one time it was an awful topic. And I would just sit there and I'd be like cracking my knuckles and sweating profusely. And one of them was like, Dad, what's a blowjob? And I was like, oh my God. I died, and I died. And he was like, the way he handled it, because he's so like in the moment. And I was like, I would have been like, oh my God, oh my, and he was just like, he like looked at me like, just stay cool. And I was like, so, and my, so, and my
I'm like
daughter,
so immature. I'm like giggling. I'm like, I would just like make something up.
it was so bad. And my daughter was like, oh my God, why would anybody want to do that?
Right. You're like, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong about that. But it just shows like how it was so tough. But looking at now, I mean, that my girls are grown and I see moms with like younger girls, and I'm like, all those restrictions that I see them putting on their kids, I'm like, yeah, that's gonna bite you in the ass. You might want to like start have that open conversation with your child so that they can come to you and talk to you and learn from you. And we could help to destigmatize a lot of those things, as far as with her body.
Right.
So
I know. It's like I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast a lot, but I think about like I went to public school and I think about that they call it family life in middle school. And the very first day we learned about sex and oral sex, they put an overhead projector, like a huge screen up, and they showed us very first step, very graphic photos of STDs
mhm, right.
and compared them to different types of food, which I will never forget and have
Oh
trouble
my
eating
God.
still. And then showed us an incredibly graphic video of a woman giving birth that to this day
Oh, I
haunts
know
me
that one.
because, well, like it that I'm really mad about that because
Yeah.
I'm still in my brain. I'm still upset by it. And some people can watch really this is
Mhm,
like the wrong word, but I'm thinking of like a horror film. But I
mhm,
can't watch a gory horror film. I can't watch
mhm,
bloody things. Like I am
mhm.
not a medical person, and
Right.
some things get frozen in your brain. And if you're a sensitive person, like that scare tactic stuff really affects you in a negative way. And I'm so angry that they, without
Right.
warning, felt compelled to show that to people in seventh grade in public school, and they were
Right.
doing it to make you scared of it.
Right. Which is it's like the worst thing to do, which might possibly be why you also have that anxiety, the white coat syndrome as well, you know? If
Yeah, I mean, and childless millennial, like I just have so much anxiety about like that process as a woman of like, yeah,
Mhm,
having a kid and I'm very like spooked of the labor part, which is interesting that like you that's
mhm.
like your vocation, you
Oh
deliver
my
babies
God.
and
I
like
love that. I love
it's
it.
like truly one of the deepest fears of my life and I don't know why,
Mhm.
but maybe it is that video.
I think that was it the Miracle of Life? I think that's the one they used to show. Like the woman had she had a lot of hair as well. Like it was
I
just
remember the hair, but I don't know what the title was.
it's a very graphic film, which is so not even like that, I mean, it can be. And where I trained down in Miami because I went to University of Miami for midwifery school. And I know we kind of jumped ahead, and I'll probably go back and tell you where I started it all. But when I went to midwifery school, I got to train at Jackson Hospital, and I was the only one in my class that got to go there, and it was so incredibly enlightening. I was telling a few of the nurses I work with this week or last week that you could tell in different the cultures how they when they labor, and I could go by a room, and based on hearing the way they labor, I knew where the woman was from. It's
No
beautiful.
way.
It was so beautiful. Like some cultures they click in pain. Some cultures the woman is very like dramatic. She's just like, oh, in Spanish. Yeah. Ay, mi amor, mi amor. And when I talk to my husband, I say that he's like, oh, why don't you talk to me like that? Like I love it. And then like I'm Dominican, so my family's from the Caribbean, and they're like Dominican women, Central. They're like they're raw. They're like, let's just get to it. We're gonna do this out, like that. So it was so incredibly wonderful to learn, and it shows you again a respect because when you go in to see a patient, when you meet someone, you should always look at. Don't like I said on my post. I think you've seen that post where it's like, I want you to see me. I don't want you to continue to judge me based on my color or my heritage, but I want you to see me so you can acknowledge my history and where I come from and the things that I bring to the table that are far different from you. And
Hmm.
that's what I see when I come in and when I talk to women. I mean, most women they want to come up with these birth plans. It kills me because I'm like, this is your first baby. You have no freaking idea. You're printing something off the internet and you're telling me this is what you want. That's not what I want to do. I want
Like
to
an
sit in a
Emily Lay planner. Like this
oh,
is
it's awful. It's so generic. She doesn't, and I'm not trying to dog these first time moms because they really just want to establish some sort of control, right? When they're
yeah,
when they're going
right.
to labor. So what I do is I'm like, okay, girl, let's sit down and let's talk about this. What is it that you're envisioning? What is it that you are feeling out of control? Let me show you the things that you can have control over and things that you don't. But if you give me your wishes, if you turn those things over to me, then I can help you to make this the best experience possible, right?
Right.
So so that's when I love the idea of the whole cultural aspect and really learning and appreciating someone um, for their history and their psychosocial and all of those things when I develop a plan, when I take care of them. And I think that that's what we miss a lot of in healthcare because
Yeah.
we don't have the time. Like truly, you don't make money if you're not like in and out. There's certain visits that are 15 minutes, there's certain that are 30. I don't care, Kate. I'm like this. I don't care. It's not about money to me because truly it's not like we make a lot of money. But I would rather that person leave out of there. Like I literally I interview you and I might ask you a couple of times and I might say, are you enjoying sex? Is it painful? Are you having a hard time with it? How are things at home? Are you getting along with your husband? Do you feel attracted to him? And then we get to the very end and then I go, did we cover everything that you wanted to talk about? And then that's when you'll see they might go, you know, I have this going on because it's never just about the physical ailment they have. It's so much more. It is so
Mhm.
much more. And I don't think a lot of patients are prepared to go to the doctor to talk about those things.
No.
So,
But if
and
prompted in a warm way, because even you just saying those things, I was like ready to tell you about my thoughts now. Like if somebody spoke to me that way, I'd be so receptive. Sorry, Tugboat was being annoying.
that's okay.
Um, and well, it's something I've been thinking about a lot too, that my friend Jesse brought up on the podcast over the summer that honestly I was kind of blind to. And there's actually or maybe it was a TikTok that was going around last week. And I'm curious about your thoughts because I think she said like, it was about healthcare and Black women. And she said like,
Hmm.
cops are to Black men as doctors
I
are to Black
saw that.
women.
I
And it
saw that.
shook me. I was like,
Me too.
that is a really, really interesting metaphor. And I remember Jesse talking about how, like, feeling like your pain is being ignored and the treatment not being the same. And I was just curious on your thoughts and if you saw that.
You know, people probably going to ping me for this, but I've never worked with, and I've said this before, I've never worked with anyone that would treat someone differently based on their color, right? Like I'm very aware of that. So, but also to be said, like I don't care what insurance people have. I know that a lot of times providers look at that because we can't order certain labs based on your insurance, and it's very what do you call like it's very trapping. I can't even think
Mm-hmm.
of the word of it really like puts us in a box as far as helping to take care of you. Um, but I'm very protective of Black females. Like I always have been. That's just my thing
Mm-hmm.
because they look like me, and so I understand where they're coming from, and I know when they are a little reserved. So I have that advantage. Brings me to a really. It makes me think of. I had a patient. I guess it was last month, and she had high blood pressure. Right? Why do we see a lot of African American Black women die? Is because they have the preeclampsia, the proteinuria, a protein in the urine, and the high blood pressure. And actually, there's two cases I'll tell you about. And this one, she had a high blood pressure. She delivered her baby. I think the baby was a little early, and it was like 2 days after the baby, and she had had a C-section, so it was time for her to go home. And
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the doctor I work with. She was also Black, and we were like, you know what? Let's switch out her medication, and we'll keep her another day to make sure it comes down. So I go in to see her, and she's already like anyone else. She would have bulldozed and gotten her way. She was like, "No, I'm ready to go home." And I was like, "Okay, girl. So you're gonna listen to me now. Like, let me
Yeah,
just break this
yeah,
down for you because your blood pressure's up, and because your blood pressure's up, and because the statistics show that 3 to 5 times you're likely to die. I need you to listen to me and I need you to stay." And she was like, "Okay, got it." And I walked out of there and I could feel myself shaking and I could almost get emotional because I was like, "Oh my God, what about if she had met with someone else?" And she would have been like, "No, I'm ready to go
right,
home. Like it's fine." Then they might have been like, "Okay, we'll just send you home."
right.
So that really like shook me. And then I had another gal, God, and she delivered, and I think she was already almost 3 weeks postpartum. And her pressures when she came in, I was like, "Oh my God." And she was like, "I've had a headache since I delivered." And I was like, "Oh my God." And she goes, "But I just figured I'll have an appointment in a couple of weeks," because she didn't want to bother. She didn't
Mm,
want to be a nuisance. And
mm,
so there's definitely different or different parts to it is that um it's the patient, it's also the patient relationship. She might not want to be a bother, she might not be heard, she might not be saying what she's feeling. Do you see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
all of
Mm-hmm.
those things, like that's why I always tell my followers, my friends on Instagram, that you need to have a good relationship with your doctor, because even when I can see a patient and she's like, "No, everything's fine." I've seen her enough, or even if it's my first time, I'm looking at her body language and I'm really assessing her. And I'm like, yeah, she's not telling me everything. There's more to it
Mm,
than that. You see what I'm saying? So
mm-hmm.
I'm looking for those cues. The nurses I work with at work, they're always like, they'll give me the patients they might think are difficult, because I'm like, no one ever truly intends to go and be difficult. No one really intends to go to the doctor
Right,
or to the provider and be an ass. Like, you don't
of
just want to,
course.
I'm going there, I'm gonna be like a mean person to them. No,
Right.
what it is that she might have been running late. She might have been, you don't know if her husband has been a jerk and was supposed to show up on time for her to get to her appointment. And now she's running late and she's feeling like, "Oh my gosh, I'm being so inconsiderate to them." Or maybe like her electricity got turned off and she just made it. And now she realized that she has this copay and things are going to be a lot more money. Like we have got to take that veil off and think there is so much more to taking care
Mm,
of this woman than the physical
yes,
responsibility.
there really is. And oh, sorry, the dog needs to go out. It's never about what it's about. Like I think so. It's so easy to quickly take something personally or to label a person, but like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much going on, especially
Mm-hmm.
now, and breaking down those barriers to get people to a place of candor. It must be so important because for me, sometimes I'm so anxious to be there. I just want to get out,
Right.
and and what I might be curt and rude, but I'm just like scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a really interesting perspective. And yeah, I feel misty hearing you tell those stories, like just in terms of like having some, like I would feel deeply like cared for and moved if somebody was like in my corner and knew,
Mm-hmm.
understood me and my background and what I had a
Mm-hmm.
propensity for, and was going to bat for my health and not against a stereotype or listening to me, the patient who really shouldn't be in control in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
this is, I don't know, this is very interesting and helpful for me to hear from the perspective of a healthcare provider, because I don't know. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a realm that I'm not in, and I avoid
Right.
at all costs. And
Right.
like, I guess I should backtrack, because like I'm so curious how you even got into, um, how you decided to become a midwife and what that process was.
So I w- so I was in the Navy. I'm going to backtrack all the way back to high school. And
Please.
the reason why I'm going to tell you this is because it does bring in the whole race part, and we got time anyway. Um,
And if I
when I
ever
was
get up and move, it's just because of the dog. And please keep talking. I'm never
All right,
bored or anything.
I'll keep talking about. I'll keep talking. I can keep talking. Because I was in high school, and I remember um all of my friends, because I went to school down here in South Florida. I finished. We started in New York and then we moved to South Florida. And I remember being in classes, and I was in honors classes, and people would say, they were like, "You're so smart for a Black girl." And that just was so weird to me. And the reason why, and I'll build up on this, but it was so interesting to me. So here I am in honors classes doing really well. And then we get to my senior year, and people are getting letters getting into colleges. And literally, Kate, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wait, wait, you how am I supposed to do that?
Mm.
Nobody guided me. Nobody said, and I could like get emotional. Nobody was like, hey, you need to fill out this form and you need to take this and you need to do this. There wasn't that guidance. And so it was like,
Oh.
I remember that feeling, seeing people getting acceptance letters and like going to UF and FSU. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this. Like, oh, I'm gonna make this happen.
Mm.
So uh, there was like all these recruiters, and I knew my parents didn't have the money to send me to college, but it was like I
Mm-hmm.
want this. So I graduated high school, and I felt embarrassed, and because I was like going to a community college, and I wasn't doing, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I gonna be anybody? What am I gonna do with my life? So I went to the community college, and I was like, I'm gonna join the Navy. So I joined the Navy, and like I think about a year or two in, then I got a scholarship to a prep school, and then I got an NROTC scholarship. So I got a scholarship. Um, Loved it. I loved being in the Navy. So I was a Navy nurse, and that was the funny thing is that my scholarship was for nursing. So I was like, I'm going to be a nurse. It was like,
Did you apply
okay.
to that specific scholarship?
I just wanted a daggone scholarship. I just wanted to go to college. I was like,
Isn't it funny how we just check a box and don't think about how it's like the rest of our lives?
that was it. And I was like, oh wait, I don't want to do nursing. And I was like, I want to be a psychologist. And they're like, yeah, no, you're going to nursing school.
Oh
Your
God.
scholarship was for nursing school. And I was like, okay, I'm going to nursing school. So I went, did that, loved it. And so then I did a few years active duty. And then I got out, and I had told my husband like years ago, I was like, we were like talking. And again, he's probably one of the people I look up to the most. I just find him to be so incredibly intelligent. And so here I was trying to impress him, and I was like, I'm going to be a midwife. And I was like, oh shit, why did I say that? I was like, now I'm going to have to do it, because once you say it, you got to make it happen. And so I was like, okay, and so one time he was like, so you're going to apply to midwifery school? I was like, I did say I was going to do that, didn't I? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and apply to midwifery school. so, so that's how it happened. It happened by, but so I was a labor and delivery nurse in the Navy. I did that for 7 years. I was a labor and delivery
Okay.
nurse. And then I went into midwifery school um, at Miami, and it was so hard, and it was so wonderful. And the girls were younger, and it was like,
Mhm.
it was tough. It was really, really tough. It was the only year we lived apart, with him being in the military, because I had a year left of school. And it was tough, but it was also a blessing because my parents lived down here. So I would literally travel almost 2 hours to go to to school every day. Like,
Wow.
and
And you lived
in
at
the
home?
traffic. No, we had our house like 8 miles away from
Okay.
my parents. And I forget, I think the girls were like in kindergarten or something like that. And so
Oh, and you already
it
had your
was
kids at this point.
yeah, yeah, for midwifery school. I've only been a midwife for 14, I guess this summer it'll be 15 years. Whoa, time flies. So I would travel almost 2 hours, with my girlfriend, and it was so, so tough to actually do that drive, and it was so much traffic, and it was just awful. And I just didn't have as much time, even to study. Like truly, my friend Andrea, who's my best buddy in North Carolina, she's like, I would be talking to her about an exam, and she's like, "Yeah, I put this letter and I put this letter." And I was like, "Yeah, based on what you're saying to me, I failed this exam because I didn't put any of that." And so I made it. I did pretty well in school. It was a wonderful experience, and I would never want to relive that again because it was definitely tough and with young kids. But I hopefully taught a lesson to my girls as well to like keep, if you want something bad enough in life, then you just got to keep at it. And I think that's what, if I could relate it to even Instagram now, is that people see someone else's success, but they don't see the journey that it took them to get to that success. And I tell my daughters that all the time. They're just like, oh, and I'm like, you're looking at where I'm at now, but you don't know that there was times I had $20 in a week, and I was eating freaking veg all, and I would never want to eat that shit again, like so it's just those rites of passage that you just go through in life. Now, I don't agree with the rites of passage that people put on you, but the rites of passage where, truly like I want something bad enough, then I'll pay that price, with this struggle. So that was how I became a midwife, and it's worked, and I just I literally will walk out of a room or walk out of a delivery room, and I just honestly, I'm like, I can't believe I got paid for that. And I'm like, I feel so blessed. And I'm not like ultra religious. I am spiritual, and I just say, I'm like, God, thank you so much for letting me live this out while I'm here on earth to be able to interact with women and to provide this service and to be an extension of their voice, and be
Hmm.
their best friend because a lot of military spouses, I'm in the room with them and they've never met me or never seen me in a visit, and I'll go, "Hi, I'm Else. I'm going to be your midwife. I'm going to deliver your baby, and I'm your best friend." And
Aw.
literally, and that's it, and that's how we become. And every delivery I do, when I'm done, I'm like, "Thank you so much for allowing me, to have this experience with you. I'm greatly humbled. I'm honored. Like it's such a joy. It is."
Like, you're so you're making me emotional.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
Like, am I okay? Or as I was editing this back, I'm like teary now. Why she's so comforting to me. I really did get emotional talking to her because I'm so scared of like all things medical, and I don't know why. And I think we're about to hit a breakthrough. But anyway, I was looking for a segue because we talk about this one company at some point, but now I'm realizing it's toward the end, and I need to interject because I know you'll be really excited for this podcast collab happening here. So our next advertiser is none other than Olive and June. You guys are, I mean, unless you live under a rock, I assume you're familiar with their Manny system. I'm not joking when I say that it was a rule when I was in college. I'm looking at you, Jasmine. That I was not allowed to paint my own nails because I was so bad at it. And I went into it overconfidently because I'm artistic. This stuck with me for years. I never painted my own nails. I just kind of wouldn't get manicures, or I'd go sometimes. I don't really have the patience for nail salons, honestly. But especially when COVID hit, I don't know, it was the little things that made you feel special and polished, No pun intended. And when I first tried the Manny system, I was like, oh, there's technique. They have this thing called the poppy that stabilizes your hand as you paint. They tell you exactly how to do it and tell you how to maintain your Manny. And the polish lasts 7+ days and does not chip. And each at home manicure comes out to like $2, which is crazy when you think about it. I really did not think this is something I could do myself. And now it's become kind of a meditative thing where I listen back to my own audio, which is something I have to do a lot. And I always lament that I can't multitask. And it's like the perfect thing to do when I need something relaxing to do while I'm listening to something else, watching TV. I often can be seen painting my nails during PowerPoint parties. I know a ton of you already use it because I know that because we've talked about it, and Ailsa's a big supporter of them too. And there's a nail polish color named after her called HGC, which I love so much. I know this isn't a functional compliment, but like it's also so cute. It's so cute. It's my favorite gift to give people who I want to practice some self-care. People get so excited over it. It's this pink box and it's only 5 steps and it gives you everything you need: nail clippers, a buffer, nail file, their proprietary handle called the Poppy that I talked about earlier, nail polish remover, a paintbrush, cuticle serum. You can pick from different polishes. It's honestly like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm that dude selling rotisserie chickens on As Seen on TV, but like these babies sell themselves. Anyway, you guys, what's really exciting is that if you are a Be There in 5 listener and want to try out the Manny kit, you can get 20% off your first Manny system with my code Be There in 5, Five, not the number 5. And you can get 20% off your first Manny system when you use promo code BeThereIn5 at oliveandjune.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5. And that will also be in the show notes. Thank you for letting me. I love to just give a little bit more airtime to new advertisers, so that I'm excited about. And lastly, and then we'll get back to the episode and be done with ads. You guys know I love ButcherBox. I just ate a pork chop tonight. We have to move, we think, and we're purging everything in our apartment. I have junk people coming tomorrow. But what's great is our freezer's kind of just curated down to this really high quality meat that when we can't figure out what to eat, we always have something there because each month ButcherBox sends a box of the highest quality meat for a better price than the grocery store. It gives me, less time that I have to spend grocery shopping, dealing with food waste or cooking. It's nice to just have what I need in my freezer, especially, when we were amidst lockdown. Fingers crossed it doesn't happen again. But every month, ButcherBox ships a curated selection. All meat is free of antibiotics and added hormones. Each box has about 10 pounds of meat, enough for 24 individual meals. And you can customize your box or go with one of theirs. I more recently have gone with theirs just to like see what they give me, and I got lobster, and I was like, what? I was really excited. I still need to figure out how to prepare it. I'm too nervous to ruin it. I just think ButcherBox is such a no-brainer with options like 100% grass-fed and finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage pork, wild-caught Alaskan salmon, and sugar nitrate-free bacon. It's the way meat should be, and I feel like the availability of this meat is just, there's such a premium on it at stores. The abundance is not always there, and I've watched one too many food documentaries to not be a little bit spooked by the source of my food. But with ButcherBox, you get the highest quality meat for just around $6 a meal. And right now, ButcherBox is offering new members ground beef for life. That's 2 pounds of ground beef in every box for the life of their subscription. I love their deals. They just really hook you up. So go to butcherbox.com/BeThereIn5. That's butcherbox.com/BeThereIn5. And get yourself some meat. Ground beef for life of your subscription. Okay, back to the episode.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because even like you saying you weren't totally sure or sold on nursing, but kind of like finding your footing in the right, like I don't know what the better word is, sector of it or practice of it with delivering babies. And I'm always so curious if people, there's just not a lot of people that can say that they love what they do or they get great. And I think a meaning and purpose is really the hardest thing for people to find, because not every job is materially purposeful. But something like that, I think, especially for something that's a fear of mine, is it's interesting to hear, because like it's some people, if you have your spouse or whoever in the room or next to you for like support, sure, but it's like the most vulnerable expression and experience a woman can go through. Like,
it is. It's very scary.
And you need, and not having, your husband's not going to understand it, your partner, it's like having somebody that's there and like supporting you in that way. And that feels like a friend, I can see being so important, when otherwise you could feel like a number, or you could feel like another.
Right.
And that's how you want to feel.
It's a very vulnerable experience. And I would, when I was at University of Miami, I would teach undergrad nursing students, and I would put them in a bed, with like, just like a woman, maybe, there's different positions they could be in, but the most traditional is what they call the lithotomy, with her legs up. And I would say, like, get in that bed, and you get in that position and you see what it feels like. It's such a vulnerable position. And I tell you, whenever I feel like I'm losing perspective, or I'm thinking I'm just like annoyed, I will do that. And I will put myself in that position again. And I say, what's it like to not feel in control, to be scared, to be frightened? And that is what keeps me focused, to want to do better, to be better for that patient. But I've worked with some amazing, like right now, my boss, like people, I travel once a month to where I work. And my boss, who's actually one of my closest friends, we worked together for 5 years before, her bedside manner, the way she treats and talks to people, it blows me away. So right now with Mass, we both have curly hair. I'm often so touched because patients might think we're the same, even though I'm like a little darker than her. Every time they say, "Oh my God, I thought you were Dr. So-and-so," and I'm like, I take that as such an honor, like a badge of honor, because she treats people how she would want to be treated and how she would want her mother or her sister treated.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
doctors that practice that way,